The Dragon King did not sentence Miraen Ash because she had no name. He sentenced her because the room where she had been found was not allowed to exist. That was the difference the court wanted everyone to understand as they dragged her barefoot into the black hall beneath the ribs of the palace dragon. A nameless child could be pitied. A bastard could be hidden. A servant could be sold. But a birth found in an illegal room was something older and more dangerous under Aurelian dragon law. It meant the palace had remembered a place the crown had ordered forgotten. Miraen stood on the circular floor of black dragonstone, wrists bound in bronze map chain, while nobles watched from galleries carved like open jaws. Every wall around them was covered not in words but in palace paths. Golden lines showing corridors, chambers, stairwells, sealed vaults, throne routes, nursery passages, and royal bloodways. The law of Cindervault Palace was not kept in books. It was kept in architecture. A person belonged only if the palace had a place for them. Miraen Ash. High architect lawkeeper Edrin Sorel descended the altar steps with the ivory map seal resting on a black cushion. He was narrow, silver-haired, and calm in the way frozen lakes were calm before they swallowed horses. Behind him, 6 royal cartographers held open the official map of the palace, a vast sheet of dragonhide painted with gold lines. There was no chamber marked at the north nursery gate, no hidden cradle room, no ash-warmed alcove, no place where a newborn girl could have been found 17 years ago wrapped in a curtain embroidered with black dragon scales. Therefore, according to the map, Miraen Ash had not been found. She had occurred. A mistake in the palace's body. Edrin lifted his voice. Miraen Ash, unwanted ward of the lower hearth, servant of no legal passage, claimant of no lawful chamber, by the authority of the royal map and the surviving throne path, you are declared a birth error. A murmur moved through the court. Birth error. Then Edrin added, softer and crueler. The palace cannot shelter what its own map refuses to draw. Miraen kept her eyes lowered, but not because she was ashamed. She had learned that if she looked directly at nobles while they wounded her, they called it defiance and punished the wound for answering back. Her whole life had been built around being misplaced. She slept in stairwells because no servant dormitory had her notch. She ate after the Ash boys because no ration slate had her count. When she carried linens through the royal wing, guards told her not to stand too long near doorways, as if the walls might remember her and commit treason. Once, when she was 12, she had asked the old furnace keeper why she was called Ash instead of given a proper housemark. The woman had touched her hair and whispered, "Because ash proves something burned, child, even when no one will name the fire." Miraen had never forgotten that. On the obsidian throne, Dragon King Caelric Aurel watched without moving. He was dressed in black ceremonial armor, his crown shaped like dragon horns burned thin at the tips. He was not old, but power had already carved stillness into him. His dark hair fell to his jaw, and his amber eyes held the terrible brightness of dragonfire under glass. Behind his throne, his dragon shadow curled along the wall, massive and winged. But the shadow did not move like living flame. It moved like stone learning to breathe. Miraen had noticed that before anyone else seemed to. His dragon shadow was beautiful, enormous, frightening, but some parts of it dragged too slowly across the wall, as if its tail had hardened into the palace itself. No one in court knew that 3 nights ago, Caelric had woken with black stone spreading beneath the skin of his left hand. No healer could explain it, no priest dared name it, but Caelric knew when it had begun. The first scale had hardened the night he signed his first correction order. Since then, every lawful mistake he allowed the palace to swallow had taken another piece of his dragon with it. Caelric's gasm at Miraen's once. Only once. It should have meant nothing. Kings looked at servants the way hunters looked at weather, but something tightened in his face when he saw the bronze map chain around her wrist. Then Edrin turned toward him. "Your Majesty, the correction requires royal witness." Caelric's hand closed around the throne arm. For a heartbeat, Miraen thought he would ask a question. What room? What child? What proof? Instead, he said, "Proceed." The word was soft. It still reached her like a door closing. He did not look away. That was worse. It meant he had chosen to watch what his word would do. Edrin carried the ivory map seal toward her. Unlike a brand, it had no flame. Unlike a blade, it had no edge. It was worse because it looked harmless. a small carved disc showing the palace from above. Every corridor obedient, every forbidden space missing. "Hold out your wrist," Edrin said. Miraen did not move. The guards forced her arm forward. Her shoulder burned. Her fingers went numb. She did not cry out. She had no house, no chamber, no legal place for pain to be recorded. If she screamed, the sound would belong to the hall before it belonged to her. Edrin pressed the map seal to the inside of her wrist. The palace stopped breathing. Not metaphorically. The candles went still. The dragon shadow behind Caelric froze. Every golden map line on the walls dimmed at once. Edrin's eyes widened. Then the floor under Mirian's feet unlocked. A thin golden line appeared beneath her toes. Not a name. Not a blood mark. A corredor. It ran from her bare feet across the black hall, cutting through the official throne path like a knife through silk. The nobles gasped as the line brightened, then split into branches. One raced toward the sealed north wall. Another circled the judgment altar. A third moved straight beneath the obsidian throne. The throne lurched. Caelric stood as the entire dais shifted 3 feet backward with a grinding roar of dragonstone. Nobles screamed. Cartographers dropped the official map. Every door in the black hall slammed shut at once. All except one. A narrow golden doorway opened in the black wall behind Miraen. It had not been there a breath before. Cold air spilled from it, carrying the scent of old smoke, cradle cloth, and sleeping dragon fire. The doorway did not look like an inheritance. It looked like a witness finally allowed to breathe. Miraen turned toward it, shaking. Edrin grabbed the cracked map seal, trying to tear it from her wrist. "Close it," the palace answered him. Not with words, with walls. Black dragonstone surged between Edrin and Miraen, rising from the floor like a protective rib. The High Architect stumbled back, suddenly separated from the girl he had just declared an error. The court erupted. Caelric descended the throne steps, but the golden corridor under Miraen's feet brightened, and the floor beneath him went dark. He stopped. The king of Cindervault Palace had just been blocked from walking his own lawful path. Miraen looked from the glowing line beneath her to the Dragon King. For the first time, his face showed fear. Not fear of her. Fear that the palace knew something his crown did not. The golden doorway behind Miraen widened. Inside it, a nursery bell began to ring. Once, twice, 17 times. Then the sealed room whispered through the stones. Not in language, but in recognition so deep every dragon in the palace walls opened one carved eye. Miraen Ash had not been born outside the law. The law had been moved around her. The forbidden room did not open like a secret. It opened like a place tired of being called impossible. The golden doorway breathed into the black hall, spilling cold nursery air across the law stone floor. It smelled of old ash, sealed cloth, and dragonfire that had slept too long behind walls taught to lie. The court did not rush toward it. No one dared. Nobles who had spent their lives walking Cindervault Palace as if it belonged to them now stared at one narrow door as though it were a mouth about to accuse them. The nursery bell rang again. 17 times had already marked Miraen's years. The 18th ring did not come. That frightened her more than the others. Edrin Sorel lifted one hand sharply. No one enters. His voice restored movement to the court. Guards stepped forward. Cartographers scrambled for the fallen official map. Nobles whispered prayers to dragon ancestors who, a few breaths ago, they had believed were comfortably carved into their side of the law. Miraen stood before the open doorway, the map seal still burning cold against her wrist. Suddenly, everyone was looking at her, not as the mistake, as the key. The difference made her stomach tighten. Edrin saw that hesitation and seized it. "This is a false corridor," he said, loud enough for every gallery to hear. "A palace sickness. Old Dragonstone sometimes remembers impossible spaces when unlawful blood disturbs it." Miraen looked at him. He had called her a mistake with perfect calm. Now he sounded almost angry. That told her the room was real. Caelric stepped down from the displaced dais. The golden path beneath Miraen's feet brightened as he came closer. Then, before his boot crossed the first branching line, the floor under him went black. The Dragon King stopped. The hall saw it. So did Miraen. Caelric Aurel, heir of the throne path, master of Cindervault, living proof of the dynasty's lawful route, could not take one more step toward the room without the palace darkening beneath him. His jaw tightened. Behind him, his dragon shadow dragged itself along the wall, and the stone along its tail cracked. For a moment, pain crossed his face so quickly most would have missed it. Miraen did not. She remembered what the furnace keeper used to say. Palaces did not scream when they suffered. They shifted weight. Edren moved between Caelric and the golden path. Your Majesty, do not indulge this. An illegal room is not a place. It is treason shaped like shelter. The sentence landed hard. There it was. His faith. Not cruelty alone. Not greed alone. Something worse because it could call itself order. Miraen held her wrist against her chest. Then why is your palace sheltering it? Edren's eyes cut to her. It is not your palace. No, she said, voice low. It only made more room for your silence than for my life. The black hall went still. Caelric looked at her then. Not like a king. Like a man who had heard something he deserved and could not yet survive. Edren's expression hardened. Step away from the door. Miraen almost laughed. All her life they had told her where not to stand. Not in the royal wing. Not beside the nursery gates. Not near map walls. Not beneath arches with dragon eyes carved above them. Now a forbidden door had opened behind her, and the same men who denied her a place wanted her to move because her place frightened them. No, she said. The word was small. The palace heard it anyway. The golden corridor widened beneath her feet. Miraen turned toward the doorway. Cold air touched her face. Something inside the hidden room waited, but it did not pull. It did not command. That made it feel different from every law that had ever touched her. Caelric's voice came from behind her. Miraen. It was the first time he had spoken her name in the hall. She did not turn. What waits in there may be dangerous, he said. She looked over her shoulder then. So was staying out here. His mouth closed. Good. The doorway accepted her. Miraen stepped inside alone. The golden corridor followed her underfoot, lighting a narrow chamber that should have been swallowed by black stone. The room was small, round, and colder than the hall, but not dead. A cradle stood at the center, carved from dark wood and rimmed with dragon bone. Above it hung a torn curtain embroidered with black dragon scales, the same pattern she had been wrapped in as an infant. Miraen's knees nearly weakened. Not because it proved she was royal. It did not. Not yet. It proved someone had placed her somewhere. Someone had made room for her before others erased it. The cradle was empty. Ash lay inside it in a thin gray crescent. On the left wall, a burned handprint marked the stone. A woman's hand, small and spread wide. The fingers blackened into the dragonstone as if she had pressed herself there while the room closed around her. Beside the handprint ran a golden map line, cut short before it could reach the cradle. Miraen stepped closer. The line did not lead to the throne. It led beneath it. Back in the hall, Caelric inhaled sharply. He could see through the doorway from where the palace had stopped him. His gaze fixed on the unfinished route, and the color drained from his face. Edren noticed too. No. The lawkeeper whispered. The word held more fear than denial. Miraen touched the broken line. The room shuddered. A second path ignited beneath the floor, deep below the black hall, running under the throne dais and into the wall where Caelric's dragon shadow clung. The king's shadow convulsed. Its stone-heavy tail cracked open, and gold light leaked from beneath the petrified scales. Caelric staggered. For the first time, the court saw the Dragon King reach for his left hand, as if pain had bitten through the glove. Miraen understood only part of it. Enough. If this room becomes lawful, she said, looking at Edren through the doorway. What happens? Edren's face went still. Caelric answered instead, voice rough. Every correction built on its absence can be challenged. He said it like a king, but he looked at the cradle like a man realizing he had slept above a buried child. Miraen looked from him to the cradle. And your throne path? He did not answer. He did not need to. The hidden nursery was not a crown. It was a wound under a crown. Edren recovered first. A palace survives by closing rooms history cannot afford. Miraen looked at the burned handprint. Maybe your history was too expensive because you made everyone else pay for it. The black dragon stone behind the cradle split. Not open. Not fully. Just enough to reveal another shape burned into the wall beside the woman's handprint. Miraen stepped closer. Breath caught in her throat. The mark was not a name. Not a throne seal. Not a royal crest. It was the shadow outline of a woman kneeling with both arms wrapped around something oval and scaled, shielding it from a blade that had come from above. The cradle was empty, but the wall beside it still held the shape of a woman protecting a dragon egg. And the blade above her carried the royal map mark. The hidden nursery had not opened to show Miraen who she was. It had opened to show what the throne had survived by removing. That truth settled over the room more heavily than dust. The burned outline of the woman remained in the black dragonstone. Her body bent around the shape of the dragon egg, while the blade above her carried the royal map mark. Not a foreign crest. Not a rebel sigil. Not the claw of some enemy beast from beyond the mountain. Palace authority. Someone with the right to redraw walls had once raised a lawful blade inside this room. Miraen stood before the burned shape, her wrists still cold from the map seal, and felt every breath in the black hall pressing through the doorway behind her. No one dared enter, but everyone watched. The nobles. The cartographers. Edrin. The king blocked from his own path. Caelric's voice came first, low and controlled. "Whose mark is on that blade?" Edrin answered too quickly. "An old distortion. Dragonstone keeps heat scars in strange shapes. The court should not mistake damage for testimony." Miraen turned slowly. "You saw the mark. I saw a wall trying to become a witness. And that frightens you?" Edrin's eyes hardened. A palace cannot be allowed to accuse its rulers every time stone remembers pain. Caelric took one step toward the doorway. The floor beneath him darkened again. Pain crossed his face, sharper this time. His left hand clenched inside the black glove. Behind him, his dragon shadow dragged itself along the wall, and the golden crack in its stone-heavy tail widened. A sound moved through the hall, not quite a growl, not quite stone splitting. Several nobles flinched. Miraen looked at him through the doorway. "Your dragon hurts when you come near this room." Caelric's eyes cut to her. For a moment, king and servant vanished, and only two people remained inside a truth neither had chosen. Then his expression closed again. "That is not your concern." "No," she said. "It became mine when your law put its seal on my skin." The words struck the hall. Caelric did not rebuke her. That was the first thing he gave her. Not merce. Permission to let the truth wound him. Edrin stepped forward, his robes brushing the dead golden line on the floor. "Your Majesty, this girl is using confusion to place herself at the center of royal law. That is exactly how illegal rooms become rebellions." Miraen looked back at the burned woman and the egg shape in the stone. She felt the pull of the easy question waiting inside her mouth. Who was she? Was that woman her mother? Was the egg hers? Had the palace opened because of her blood? She refused it. All her life, they had made her hunger for a self small enough to beg for. A name. A room. A place to sleep where no one could kick her feet and tell her to move. But the hidden nursery had not opened only to comfort her. It had opened because a crime had been built into the shape of the palace. So she asked the question no one expected. What was removed? The room answered only with light. Not words. A thin golden root spread from the cut line beside the cradle. It crawled beneath the floor like a vein remembering blood. The path moved from the nursery, under the black hall, beneath the throne dais, and into the wall where Caelric's dragon shadow clung. The golden line touched the shadow's petrified tail. Caelric staggered as if the contact had struck his bones. The dragon shadow opened one eye. Its amber light was dim with pain. Miraen's breath caught. The dragon did not look at the egg. It looked at the severed route. Caelric saw it too. His voice was rougher when he spoke. "That path should not exist." Edrin turned on him. "No, Majesty. That path is attempting to exist. There is a difference." Caelric looked at the official map lying crumpled on the floor. "Does the royal map show this route?" "No." "Did it ever?" Edrin's silence lasted half a breath too long. The court heard it. Miraen felt the chamber grow colder. Caelric's eyes sharpened. "Answer me." Edrin's calm returned, but it came back with iron under it. "There were many obsolete passages before your dynasty stabilized the palace. Old routes, failed nurseries, dead succession experiments. Not every path deserves survival. The egg shape in the wall glowed faintly. Miraen touched the cradle rim. Succession experiment? Edrin looked at her as if she had dirtied the word by repeating it. Dragon succession is not a bedtime tale for furnace wards. She is standing in the room you erased, Caelric said. She has more right to ask than anyone outside it. A dangerous silence followed. Miraen looked at him then. Truly looked. The king had not crossed into the room. He had not touched her, defended her, or undone what he had ordered, but he had turned one question away from Edrin and toward the truth. It was not enough. It mattered anyway. Edrin's gaze narrowed. A throne cannot be unlawful merely because a room remembers a woman. Miraen stepped toward the burned mark. Then let the room remember the blade. Edrin moved. Do not touch it, Caelric said. Stop. No one knew which of them he had commanded. Miraen chose not to care. She placed her palm against the blade mark above the woman. The wall went black. For one terrifying breath, the room vanished around her. No cradle, no doorway, no court beyond. Only darkness, and a sound like stone being cut while something alive tried not to cry out. Then an image formed in the black. Not a full memory. Pieces. A woman with ash-dark hair stumbling into the nursery with both hands wrapped around a dragon egg veined in dull gold. A palace route glowing beneath her feet. A man in royal cartographer robes behind her, holding a blade marked with the map eye. The egg pulsing once. Weakly. As if it had not yet chosen a king but had already been promised a path. The woman turned, shielding it. The blade came down. Miraen tore her hand away with a gasp. The image collapsed. But not before Caelric saw enough. His face had gone colorless. Edrin spoke into the silence. A closed route cannot accuse the living. Caelric looked at him. Who closed it? The crown preserves stability. That is not an answer. It is the only answer that has kept this palace standing. Miraen felt the truth press against the edges of the room. Not her name. Not inheritance. Not a claim to be queen. Something stranger. Heavier. She had not inherited the room. She had inherited the path no king was allowed to walk. The golden route beneath her feet brightened at that thought. Caelric saw it. So did Edrin. For the first time, the lawkeeper looked not at the room, not at the wall, but at Miraen herself, as if she had become a door he could not safely close. Then the burned blade in the wall moved. Stone should not have moved, but the image above the woman shifted inch by inch, scraping through black dragonstone until the point turned away from the egg. Away from the woman. Away from the cradle. It pointed through the open doorway, across the black hall, straight at Caelric's crown. Not at the man beneath it. At the law he wore. The blade did not accuse Caelric first. It accused the crown before it accused the man wearing it. That was why no one in the black hall moved. A king could be defended. A man could be excused. A ruler could say he had inherited old burdens, old lies, old rooms already sealed before his first breath. But a crown was harder to rescue from accusation, because a crown did not bleed, did not apologize, and did not tremble when the palace pointed at it. Caelric stood beneath the burned blade's aim, his face pale beneath the black gold crown. The dragon shadow behind him dragged its petrified tail against the wall, and every scrape sounded like stone teeth grinding through bone. Edrin recovered first. He always did. You see? The High Architect, lawkeeper said, turning toward the court with both hands lifted. This is exactly why illegal rooms cannot be indulged. The chamber does not seek truth. It seeks treason. It points at the crown because all unlawful architecture eventually attacks lawful authority. Miraen stood inside the hidden nursery, one hand still near the burned wall, the other pressed over the cold seal on her wrist. She expected Caelric to answer like a king, to protect the crown first, and question the wound later. Instead, he looked at Edrin. Do not call fear architecture. The hall went still. Edrin's mouth tightened. Your Majesty. Caelric lifted one gloved hand toward the blade in the wall, but he did not step closer. The palace still held the floor dark beneath him. If the crown is accused, then name the crown. Law. Not the man. Not the rumor. Not the girl. The law. Edrin's eyes flashed. A room cannot be cross-examined. Then answer for it. I answer for the palace map. No, Caelric said, voice sharpening. You answer for the version of it you kept. The words moved through the court like fire beneath silk. Miraen watched him carefully. This was not mercy. Not yet. It was something more dangerous for him than mercy. Doubt, made public. The nursery wall reacted not with speech, but with movement. The burned blade remained pointed toward Caelric's crown, but the gold line beneath the cradle spread again, threading into the black hall and curling around the fallen official map. The dragonhide map lifted from the floor by itself and opened in midair. Edrin lunged toward it. Do not touch that. No one had. That made the warning worse. A sealed corner of the map peeled back. Under the painted throne path lay another layer of older gold, scratched nearly flat but not gone. The hidden line matched the root beneath Miraen's feet. Nursery, throne, dragon shadow, egg root. The court read none of it aloud. But everyone saw enough to understand that the official map had not simply forgotten the passage. Something had been drawn over it. Caelric stared at the exposed layer. What clause allowed this? Edrin did not answer. Miraen did. Ask the man who keeps saying rooms are treason. Edrin turned toward her. You speak above your station. I do not have one, she said. You made sure of that. For a moment, something like pride flickered across Caelric's face. He buried it quickly, as if he knew he had no right to enjoy her courage, while standing under the law that had harmed her. Edrin, he said. The clause. The lawkeeper's composure thinned. Royal redrawing clause. Third reign of the Aurel restoration. It allowed emergency alteration of palace architecture when dragon succession threatened throne stability. The words struck the room harder than shouting would have. Miraen looked back at the burned woman shielding the egg. Dragon succession threatened throne stability? Edrin's gaze stayed on Caelric. The palace had fractured after the old blood wars. Competing routes formed. Nurseries claimed eggs. Eggs drew paths. Paths drew factions. Without intervention, Cindervault would have become a battlefield with walls. Caelric's dragon shadow shuddered. The gold crack in its tail widened toward its spine. Caelric's jaw tightened, but he did not look away from Edrin. So the crown cut one route. The crown preserved one, at the cost of another, at the cost of chaos. Miraen looked at the empty cradle. At the cost of a woman and an egg. Edrin's eyes snapped to her. You do not know what that egg would have chosen. No, she said. But someone was afraid it would choose a path the crown could not own. Silence fell. A crown could sit on a head. A path had to be answered by the palace itself. Caelric looked toward the nursery, and for the first time Miraen saw something in him break that was not stone. He was beginning to understand that his dragon shadow had not been dying because he was weak. It had been dying because his throne path was feeding on a root that should never have been cut. Edrin saw the same realization. He moved quickly. Your Majesty, if this room is recognized as lawful, every correction tied to its removal becomes unstable. Service placements, bloodway closures, succession proofs, sealed nurseries, retired corridors. Half the palace may attempt to revise itself. Health? Miraen asked. Edrin's face hardened. There it was. Too much silence. Too many rooms. Caelric's voice lowered. How many? The number is irrelevant. How many rooms did you close? Edrin stepped closer to the edge of the darkened path. Enough to keep your crown on your head. Caelric went still. The answer did what no accusation had done. It placed the crime not safely in a dead king's hand, not completely in Edrin's, not entirely in history. It placed it beneath Caelric's feet, and asked what kind of king he would become now that he knew the floor was false. Miraen looked at him. She did not plead. She had spent too long being forced to need things from men who owned doors. Caelric looked from her to the hidden nursery, then to the burned woman shielding the egg. What happens, he asked Edrin, if I let the room stand? Edrin's voice turned quiet. You weaken the myth that your throne path was always singular. The myth? The obedience? Edrin said. Kings do not rule because every stone agrees with them. They rule because the court believes the stones have no other choice. Miraen felt the nursery grow colder. Not with fear. With attention. Caelric removed his crown. The entire hall drew breath. His dragon shadow lifted its head. Pain, bright, and trembling. Edrin went pale. Your Majesty, do not perform symbolism for a servant girl. Caelric did not look at him. He held the crown at his side, and his uncovered brow looked strangely human beneath the black ribs of the hall. This is not for her, he said. Miraen's heart tightened. Then he looked at her. It is because of her. The difference mattered. He turned toward the hidden room and spoke clearly enough for the palace, the court, and every sealed stone beneath them to hear. Let the room stand. The nursery bell rang once. Not 17. Once. The hidden doorway widened until golden light flooded the black hall. The official map tore down the center, and beneath the palace, something enormous answered. Not a dragon waking. Not yet. More like architecture remembering it had lungs. Edrin staggered back. What have you done? Caelric did not answer. The answer came from below. One sealed door opened beneath the palace. Then another. Then another. 7 deep sounds rose through the black hall, each one a lock surrendering after generations of obedience. 7 forbidden passages had opened under Cindervault Palace, and from the lowest one came the cry of a dragon that had never been allowed to hatch. The cry beneath Cindervault Palace did not sound like a dragon. It sounded like something that had never been allowed to become one. The black hall froze around the sound. Nobles who had survived wars, poison trials, and dragonfire executions stepped back as if the floor itself had become unsafe. 7 sealed passages had opened below them, but only the lowest one kept crying. Miraen stood inside the hidden nursery, one hand on the empty cradle, the golden route burning beneath her bare feet. Caelric stood outside the doorway with his crown on the floor. For the first time, he looked less like a king than a man listening to a crime breathe under his house. Edrin raised his hand. Seal the lower levels. No, Caelric said. The word struck the hall harder than any shout. Edrin turned. Your Majesty, 7 illegal passages have opened beneath the palace. This is not revelation. This is structural treason. A room is not treason because you failed to bury it, Caelric said. A sealed room is not murder. Edrin replied. It is mercy with walls. Miraen looked at him from the nursery. Mercy for whom? Edrin's eyes sharpened. For the living who must survive what history cannot afford. The cry came again. This time Caelric flinched. Miraen saw it. So did his dragon shadow. The great shadow on the wall twisted in pain, its stone-heavy tail cracking wider as gold light leaked through the petrified scales. Miraen understood then. The thing below was not calling to her first. It was calling to his dragon. Caelric stepped toward the root. The floor blackened beneath him. He stopped, jaw tight, then slowly removed his left glove. The court gasped. His hand was turning to black dragonstone. Hard scales had spread from his fingertips to his wrist, threaded with trapped gold fire. It looked as if the palace had entered his flesh and begun making him part of the wall. Edrin went pale. Cover your hand. Caelric did not. This began with the corrections, he said. Edrin's voice dropped. It began because you delayed necessary closures. No, Caelric said. It began the first night I signed one. The confession silenced the court. Miraen stared at him. He had not known everything, but he had known obedience was costing him something. And still, he had kept signing. Caelric pressed his stone-marked hand toward the golden path. The root recoiled. His dragon shadow convulsed. Caelric fell to one knee, breathing hard, crown lying beside him like a dead thing. Miraen took one step forward. Edrin's voice cut through the air. Careful, girl. Kings have turned pity into chains since before you were born. She stopped. Caelric lifted his head. I have to go below. No, Miraen. His eyes found hers. You cannot walk a path the palace knows your crown replaced. My crown is on the floor. The law is still in your blood. That struck him clean. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then he asked, quieter, Who can go? Miraen looked down. The golden root waited at her feet. Not commanding, offering. That frightened her more than force. Edrin stepped closer to the boundary. If she enters the lower passages, she may wake what was sealed to protect the realm. Miraen turned toward him. What was sealed? A failed dragon root. What failed? His mouth tightened. Caelric's voice came low. Answer her. Edrin looked from the king to the cradle. The egg did not hatch. The cry trembled through the floor again. Miraen whispered. It tried. Edrin's eyes hardened. A dragon that chooses its own path can unmake a king. There it was. Not fear of monsters. Fear of a dragon that answered the palace before it answered a crown. Miraen turned toward the narrow seam opening behind the cradle. Caelric's voice stopped her. Miraen. She looked back. If you go down there, it may hurt you. Everything outside this room already did. He absorbed the words without defense. Then he said, I will not order you. The absence of command felt almost like air. Miraen entered the passage alone. The stairway was narrow, black, and cold enough to bite through skin. At the bottom waited a circular chamber with no dragon, no crown, and no throne. Only a cracked, hatching basin of black stone, veined with dull gold. 7 map lines had once met around it. 6 were severed. 1 remained faintly alive, leading back to Miraen's feet. Above the basin, a golden root had been cut mid-formation and trapped inside the wall like lightning buried in bone. The cry came from there, not from an egg. From the path an egg had been denied. Far above, Caelric's dragon shadow roared in pain. The living line flared from the basin, up through the palace, under the throne, and into the petrified dragon shadow on the wall. Then old gold letters carved themselves around the broken basin. Not all dragons die in eggs. Some are buried in kings. The hatching chamber went silent after the basin spoke. Miraen stood alone beneath the palace, staring at the cracked black stone while the last gold letters faded into its rim. The chamber did not feel like a tomb. Tombs were made after death. This place felt worse. It had been built to keep something half alive. Far above her, Caelric's dragon shadow roared again, and the sound traveled through the single living root at Miraen's feet. The line pulsed once, then dimmed, as if carrying pain too large for it. Miraen looked up through the darkness. Caelric, she whispered. The rout answered with his breath. Not words. Breath. Broken, restrained, and close enough that she understood the palace had not separated them as completely as it seemed. Above, in the black hall, Caelric was still on one knee. The court watched him with horror now. Not because their king had fallen, but because his dragon shadow was no longer hiding its sickness. Stone had climbed along one wing. Gold fire throbbed beneath it, trapped and furious. Edrin stood over him like a man guarding a prison door. Do you understand now? The lawkeeper said. The buried rout is inside you. Your line did not steal from it. Your line survived by containing it. Caelric looked up at him. Containing a dragon is not the same as ruling with one. It is if the dragon would have chosen against the crown. Miraen heard the words through the rout. Each one carried down like cold water. She placed her hand on the hatching basin. Who cut the 6 lines? Edrin's gaze snapped toward the nursery doorway above. Do not answer her. Caelric's voice came rough. She asked the chamber. No, Edrin said. She asked the crime to explain itself. Crimes do not get to choose language. Miraen's fingers tightened. For once, she did not wait for the palace to show her a memory. She looked at the severed lines herself. 6 cuts, all made cleanly, all angled from the same direction. This was not collapse, not accident, not a failed hatching. It was surgery. You did not seal a failed root, she said, loud enough for the living path to carry her voice upward. You cut it before it could finish. The black hall heard her. So did Caelric. His face changed. Edrin's calm thinned. A dragon that is not hatched cannot be murdered. Miraen looked at the cracked basin. But it can be denied. The living rout brightened. A tremor moved through the wall. Edrin stepped back. Enough. He turned to the cartographers. Bring the black compass. They hesitated. His voice sharpened. Now. One young cartographer, pale with fear, opened a silver case and removed a compass made of black bone. Its needle did not point north. It pointed toward the golden root beneath Miraen's feet. Caelric saw it and rose with difficulty. "What is that?" Edrin did not look at him. "A mercy instrument." Miraen's stomach turned. She had learned that word. Mercy with walls, mercy with silence, mercy with blades. Edrin continued. "If the remaining root is cut, the lower chamber will close. The king's dragon will stabilize. The palace will stop revising." Caelric stared at him. "And Miraen? She will no longer have unlawful access." "That is not an answer. It is the answer a crown can survive." The black compass needle began to spin. Below, the living route under Miraen's feet trembled. She understood then. The compass would not close a door. It would cut the last path that still knew she belonged somewhere. It would return the palace to silence, leave the dragon buried inside Caelric's shadow, and make her a mistake again. For one moment, fear nearly took her. Not fear of death. Fear of being erased after finally touching proof that she had once been placed, held, protected. Caelric looked down the nursery doorway as if he could see her through stone and distance. "Miraen." His voice was different now. Not command. Not warning. A choice offered too late, but offered with both hands open. "If there is a way to pull the root out of my dragon," he said, "do it." Edrin went still. "Majesty." Caelric ignored him. "Do not save my crown. Save what it buried." Miraen closed her eyes. That sentence hurt, because it was the first one that sounded like a king stepping away from his own excuse. The black compass rose higher in the cartographer's shaking hand. Miraen pressed both palms against the cracked hatching basin. "I am not your blade," she whispered. The basin warmed beneath her touch. "I am not your key." The living route climbed her wrists in gold light. "I am the path you cut around." Above, the black compass needle snapped. The cartographer screamed and dropped it. Gold fire burst through the cracked bone and raced across the black hall toward Caelric's dragon shadow. Adrian lunged for it. Too late. The gold route struck Caelric's petrified wing. Stone exploded from the shadow in silent fragments. Caelric gasped as if the pieces had been torn from his own back. He staggered but stayed standing. His dragon shadow unfurled one half-living wing, wounded and bright. No longer fully stone. Then the buried cry changed. Not a cry now. A heartbeat. Once. Then again. The cracked hatching basin opened beneath Miraen's hands, revealing no egg, no beast, no sleeping royal creature waiting to choose her. Only a hollow shaped like a root. At its center lay 6 broken pieces of gold path, each engraved with a closed door. Miraen lifted the first piece. The palace above screamed. Edrin's face went white. Caelric turned toward him slowly. "What are those doors?" Edrin did not answer. Miraen looked at the first broken piece in her hand as old ash fell from its engraving. For the first time, the hatching chamber showed her not a royal memory, but a servant corridor. A woman running, a baby wrapped in black dragon scale cloth, and behind them, 6 nursery doors closing one by one. Miraen stopped breathing. The dragon route had not been cut once. It had been divided among 6 erased rooms. Then the first broken piece warmed in her palm, and from somewhere deep inside the palace, a sealed child's door began to knock back. The knocking did not come from beneath Miraen. It came from inside the palace wall above her head. Small, patient, almost polite. That made it worse. Miraen stood in the hatching chamber with the first broken piece of gold path burning in her palm. The shard was no larger than a dagger blade, but it felt heavier than the cradle, heavier than the map seal on her wrist, heavier than every year she had spent being told she had occurred where no person should have been. Above her, the black hall had gone silent. Caelric's voice carried down the living route. "Edrin, what door is knocking?" Edrin did not answer at once. That was answer enough. Miraen closed her fingers around the shard. The knocking came again. 3 soft taps, then silence. "Do not open it," Edrin said. His voice had lost its ceremonial calm. Miraen looked up into the darkness. "Why?" "Because some rooms were closed before they became crimes." "No," she said. "Rooms do not become crimes. People do things inside them." A tremor moved through the route. Far above, Caelric stepped toward the nursery doorway again. The path darkened beneath him, but this time he did not retreat. Pain pulled through his body. His half-freed dragon shadow dragged its broken wing across the wall, gold fire leaking through the cracked stone. "Majesty," Edrin warned. "If you force that path, your dragon will fracture further." Caelric's voice came colder. "Then answer before I must." Mirian had never heard the court so quiet, not respectful, afraid of what obedience might cost them next. Edrin finally spoke. The 6 doors were containment chambers. Miraen's stomach tightened. For what? For unstable routes. Witness fragments. Children born too close to dragon architecture. Mothers who heard walls answering back. His voice sharpened. Things that could have torn the palace into rival claims. Miraen looked at the cracked hatching basin. "You cut the dragon root into pieces and hid each piece behind a life." Adrian's silence confirmed it. The first shard in her palm burned hotter. The knocking returned. This time from the right wall of the chamber. A seam appeared in the black stone, thin as a fingernail. Gold light glowed behind it. Caelric said, "Open it." Edrin turned on him. "You do not know what you are inviting." "No," Caelric said. "I know what I inherited." Miraen looked toward the seam. The easy thing would have been to let him command it. To let the king take the burden and make her only the girl standing near the door. She refused that too. "No," she said. Above, Caelric stopped. Miraen lifted the shard. "He does not open what was hidden through me." The hall heard her. Caelric's answer came after a breath. "Then what do you choose?" The question was simple. It still shook her. No one had asked her that in the Black Hall. Not Edrin. Not the guards. Not the court. Not the law. Miraen looked at the sealed seam. "I choose to know what my life was used to cover." The shard touched the wall. The first door opened inward. No wind came out. No monster. No dragon. Only the smell of dust, old milk, and extinguished candles. Miraen stepped into a chamber even smaller than the hidden nursery. Its ceiling was low. Its walls were bare except for scratch marks near the floor, as if someone very young had counted days with a piece of broken bone. At the center stood a child's stool. On it lay a bronze wrist chain no bigger than Mirian's hand. She went still. A child had been kept here. Not as heir. Not as treasure. As a lock. The wall beyond the stool held a burned image. But faintly this time. A young woman sitting on the floor, cradling a toddler against her chest, while a gold line ran from the child's wrist into the stone. Miraen touched the wrist chain. A memory opened. Not fully. Just enough. A little boy crying without sound. A mother begging a cartographer not to take the root from him. A younger Edrin standing in the doorway, not yet silver-haired, holding a map knife with both hands. "He is only a passage-bearer," the mother pleaded. "He has no claim." Young Edrin answered, "Every passage becomes a claim when desperate people need a door." The memory shattered. Miraen stumbled back. Above, Caelric's voice was low with fury. "You put children in the walls," Edrin replied. "I prevented civil war. You put children in the walls. They were not harmed beyond necessity." The first chamber shook. Miraen looked at the scratch marks near the floor. Not harmed. The phrase made her colder than stone. She turned toward the living route and spoke upward. "What happened to the boy?" No one answered. Then the small bronze wrist chain lifted from the stool. It did not fly to Miraen. It turned toward Caelric. The chain stretched into a thin gold line and shot upward through the palace, straight into his half-stone dragon shadow. Caelric cried out. Not loudly, but enough. The dragon shadow arched, and inside its cracked wing, a small shape appeared for one heartbeat. A child's handprint. "Miraen Stahl," Edrin whispered. "No." Caelric looked at his own shadow, horror breaking through his control. "There are children inside my dragon." Edrin's face hardened. "There are stabilizers inside your reign." Miraen stepped out of the first chamber, shaking. The boy's wrist chain dissolved into gold dust around her fingers. The first broken shard in her palm became whole. One of 6 severed lines restored itself around the hatching basin. Above, Caelric's dragon shadow took one full breath. Then 6 more knocks sounded through the lower dark. Not from one door, from every erased chamber at once. And this time, one of the knocks answered in a child's voice. "Is the king still wearing us?" The child's voice turned the black hall into a place no crown could hide inside. Caelric stood beneath his own dragon shadow, one hand braced against the cracked wall, staring at the small handprint glowing inside the half-freed wing. The court had seen kings bleed before. They had seen rulers wounded in war, poisoned by rivals, betrayed by lovers, and blessed by dragonfire. They had never seen a king realize his power had been built from children. Miraen stood below in the broken hatching chamber, the first restored shard warm in her palm. Around the basin, 1 gold line now lived. 5 remained severed. Behind the first small door, the empty stool and scratch-marked walls waited in silence, no longer impossible. Edrin's voice came from above, sharp enough to cut through fear. Do not listen to it. The chamber echoes old imprints. It does not understand kingship. Caelric turned on him slowly. A child asked if I was still wearing him. A memory asked, Edrin said. Not a child. Miraen lifted her head. That is easier for you, isn't it? The living route carried her voice upward. Edrin looked toward the nursery doorway, his face pale with rage. You have opened 1 containment chamber, and think yourself wise enough to judge a century of survival. No, Miraen said. I have opened 1 room. It judged you before I could. The first restored line brightened. Caelric looked at his dragon shadow again. The child's handprint was fading, but not gone. His dragon had breathed after the line was restored. Not healed, not freed, but less buried. What was his name? Caelric asked. Edrin went still. The court did too. It was a dangerous question. A name could make a chamber into evidence. A name could make stabilizer into victim. A name could make a king's inheritance answerable. Edrin said. Names were removed to prevent factional worship. Caelric's jaw tightened. What was his name? The record was dissolved. Miraen looked at the small bronze dust in her hand. Not dissolved. Hidden so thoroughly the living had mistaken silence for absence. She stepped back into the first chamber. The marks near the floor were uneven, too low for an adult. She knelt and pressed her fingers to them. They were not random scratches. They were repeated curves, carved by someone with a shaking hand. A child trying to remember himself. Miraen traced the deepest mark. Gold light flickered. Not a wall speaking. Not a palace explaining. A boy's memory answering touch. A small voice breathed through the dust. Lior. The name rose through the root. Above, Caelric closed his eyes. The handprint inside his dragon shadow flared. Miraen stood. His name was Lior. Edrin's face hardened. A partial name. Nothing more. It is more than you left him. The first gold line around the hatching basin locked into place. Caelric's dragon shadow shook as the name entered it. A strip of black stone broke from its wing and shattered across the wall. Caelric gasped, not from weakness alone, but from feeling something leave him that had never belonged inside him. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Open the next door. Edrin moved instantly. Majesty, if she restores all 6 lines, your dragon may reject the throne path entirely. Caelric looked at him. For the first time, he looked less afraid of losing power than of keeping it. Then it should. The court inhaled as one body. Miraen heard the sentence and felt something in her chest twist painfully. He had not forgiven himself. He had not earned her trust. But he had placed one hand on the lie and stopped pretending it was stone. That mattered. She turned toward the second knock. It came from behind the hatching basin, deeper than the first. The second shard lay inside the hollow, engraved with a sealed door and a tiny cradle mark. Miraen lifted it. The gold was colder this time. A seam opened in the chamber floor. Not wide. Enough. She descended 3 steps into a second sealed room. This one had no stool. It had 6 tiny beds carved into the stone, all empty, all facing the wall. Above them hung strips of old cloth, each embroidered with a different unfinished mapline. The air smelled of fever and ash water. Miraen's throat tightened. This was not one child, she said. Caelric's voice came through the root, low and horrified. How many? Miraen counted the beds. 6, Edrin answered before she could ask. Root fever. Children born near unstable passages often infected the architecture around them. Their containment protected thousands. Miraen touched one of the cloth strips. Were they sick before you sealed them? Edrin did not answer. Caelric said. Were they? Silence. Miraen closed her eyes briefly. Then she opened them and pressed the second shard to the nearest bed. A memory rose not from the wall, but from the cloth. A little girl with bright black eyes sitting upright while a woman spooned water to her lips. The child was not fevered. She was singing. With each soft note, a golden line appeared in the air, building a corridor from sound. A young Edrin stood in the doorway, watching with cold wonder. She is making passage from breath, someone whispered. Edrin answered. Then remove the breath from the map. The memory snapped. Miraen stumbled back. Her hand went to her own throat. Above, Caelric's dragon shadow made a broken sound. Edrin said, Do not dramatize necessity. If one child could sing a corridor, imagine what rebels could build from her. Miraen's voice shook. She was a child. She was an opening. She was a child. The second shard burned in Miraen's palm. This time she did not wait for the room to offer the name. She searched the cloth strips, the bed edges, the floor near the wall. There, beneath the lowest bed, 6 letters had been carved almost flat. Seren. Miraen touched them. The second line restored itself. In the black hall, Caelric cried out as another piece of stone broke from his dragon shadow. This time the court saw what emerged inside the wing before the light faded. Not one handprint, but 6 small breaths of gold, clustered like sleeping sparks. Caelric looked at them as if they were wounds wearing faces. Edrin stepped toward the fallen crown. Enough. You are weakening the throne in front of every rival house. Caelric did not look at the crown. He looked at Miraen through the open route. No, he said. She is showing me what the throne has been using to stand. Miraen held the second restored shard, breathing hard. 2 lines lived around the basin. 4 remained broken. Then the third door knocked. Not from the wall. From beneath Caelric's throne. The obsidian seat split across the base, and a child's voice whispered from inside the crack. We held up the king. Did he ever hold us? The throne answered before Caelric did. Its obsidian base split wider, not enough to collapse, but enough for a thin breath of gold to escape from beneath it. The child's question remained in the air. We held up the king. Did he ever hold us? No one in the black hall spoke. Caelric stared at the crack under his throne, as if he were seeing it for the first time. He had sat above that stone since his coronation. He had placed his hand on its dragon heads, received oaths before it, condemned traitors from it, signed correction orders beneath its shadow. Now something small was speaking from inside its foundation. Edrin stepped in front of him. Do not touch the seat. Caelric's eyes did not leave the crack. There is a child under my throne. There is a support imprint under your throne, Edrin said sharply. Language makes monsters of necessary things. Miraen's voice rose from the hatching chamber below. No, language is what you removed so necessary things could become children. The court heard her. Caelric did too. His jaw tightened. This door is not hers to open. Edrin relaxed for half a breath, thinking the king had finally chosen safety. Then Caelric looked at the throne. It is mine. The old nobles stirred in alarm. Edrin turned pale. Your Majesty, throne architecture is sovereign. If you break the support seal, you challenge the legal weight of your own reign. Caelric took one step forward. The petrified dragon shadow behind him groaned. More stone crawled across its wing, punishing the movement. Caelric's face tightened, but he did not stop. Miraen came to the base of the living route below, listening. This part could not belong to her. Not fully. She had opened the nursery. She had entered the lower chamber. She had restored Lior and Seren. But the voice beneath the throne was asking whether a king could hold what had held him. She could witness. She could not answer for him. Caelric placed his stone-marked left hand on the cracked throne base. Edrin seized his arm. If you do this, every rival house will say the throne chose shame over stability. Caelric looked at his hand on Edrin's sleeve. Edrin released him. The throne already chose shame, Caelric said. It only called it stability until today. He pressed his palm harder to the crack. The black hall shook. A hidden stair unfolded from beneath the throne, each step sliding out like a secret too tired to remain buried. Gold light rose between them. Not warm, not gentle, old. Caelric descended alone. The throne did not stop him. That frightened the court most of all. Below the dais was a chamber no map had ever shown. It was narrow and circular, directly under the obsidian seat. 6 stone pillars rose to support the throne above. Each pillar held a small palm mark, a child's height from the floor, pressed into gold-veined black stone. Caelric stopped before the nearest one. He did not touch it at first. He only looked. Miraen, watching through the living root below, a man realizing his body had grown comfortable above someone else's trapped breath. "What was this chamber?" he asked. Edrin's voice came from above, cold and strained. "Royal weight chamber." It balanced competing passage pressure after the redrawing clause. Without it, the throne would have shifted from the oral route. Caelric turned slowly. Children balanced it. Passage bearers balanced it. Children. Edrin's silence came too late. Caelric touched the first palm mark. A memory opened. A boy standing under the throne while men in cartographer robes painted gold around his hands. He was not chained. That somehow made it worse. He looked as if someone had told him he was helping the kingdom. Above him, the throne groaned. The boy lifted both palms to the pillar and whispered, "Will the king know my name?" A man answered, "Kings do not need the names of stones." The memory ended. Caelric's breath broke once. "What was his name?" he asked. No answer came from Edrin. The palm mark warmed beneath his hand. This time Caelric did not ask the lawkeeper. He asked the child, "What was your name?" The gold mark brightened. A small voice answered, "Theron." The first pillar cracked from top to base. Above, the throne lurched. The court cried out. Caelric stayed standing under it. Miraen gripped the living root in the lower chamber as the third broken shard lifted from the hatching basin and burned in her palm. Around the basin, a third line began to wake. Edrin shouted from above, "Stop him! If the pillars fail, the throne path will fall out of alignment." Caelric moved to the second palm mark. Another memory. A girl with cropped dark hair, standing on tiptoe to reach the pillar. She was told to hold still while the palace learned her shape. She asked whether she could see the sun after. No one answered. Caelric touched the mark. "Your name?" "Vela." The voice whispered. The second pillar cracked. Stone dust fell from the ceiling. The obsidian throne above shifted again, no longer centered on the dais. Edrin sounded almost wild now. "Majesty, you are unseating yourself." Caelric looked up through the opening. "No. I am removing children from under me." Miraen closed her eyes. That sentence entered her like a sharp, unwanted hope. He was still guilty, still late, still crowned by what had harmed them. But he was no longer hiding from the cost. Caelric moved from pillar to pillar. Theron, Vaela, Iren, Sol, Marit, Eshan. Each name cracked a support. Each crack shook the throne. Each restored child loosened another piece of stone from Caelric's dragon shadow, until gold fire bled through the wing, the tail, the throat. Then the final pillar broke. The throne above collapsed backward, not shattered but unseated, sliding away from the center of the dais with a sound like a dynasty being dragged off its lie. The court screamed. Edrin did not. He smiled. Only then did Miraen understand. The High Lawkeeper had been waiting for the throne to move. From his robe, Edrin drew a second map. Black, folded, and edged in red gold. "The king has broken sovereign alignment," he declared. "By emergency succession law, the palace must accept a steadier route." Caelric looked up sharply. Miraen's blood went cold. The black map unfolded across the hall by itself, revealing a throne path that did not lead to Caelric. It led to Edrin, and under Miraen's feet, the living route began to bleed. Miraen felt the living root bleed before she saw Edrin's black map take the hall. The gold beneath her feet thinned into red light, spreading across the hatching chamber like a wound under glass. Above her, Edrin's emergency map unfolded through the black hall, swallowing the old throne lines one by one. The red gold path crawled past the unseated throne, around the broken pillars, and stopped at Edrin's feet. He did not look afraid anymore. He looked ready. Caelric stood beneath the displaced throne, dust in his hair, his dragon shadow half freed and bleeding gold from broken stone scales. He looked up through the opening. You waited for me to move the throne. Edrin smiled. I waited for you to become merciful enough to weaken it. The black map rose behind him like a second crown. By emergency succession law, Edrin declared, a king who breaks sovereign alignment forfeits architectural trust. The palace must accept the steadier route. The red gold line accepted his boots. The court gasped. Caelric tried to climb toward the hall, but his dragon shadow convulsed. Without the buried children holding the old path in place, his crown law could no longer carry him. He fell to one knee. Edrin looked down at him. Compassion has made you unmappable. Miraen gripped the cracked hatching basin below. The restored names still glowed around it. Lior, Seren, Theron, Viola, Iren, Sol, Marit, Eshan. They were no longer buried inside Caelric's dragon, but freeing them had left an emptiness Edrin was trying to occupy. Miraen stared at the hollow in the basin. No egg waited there. No crown. No dragon choosing her. Only the shape of a route that had once been cut before it could become living fire. Then she understood. Edrin's map was not stronger because it was lawful. It was stronger because it had never carried anyone it wounded. A living root bled. A false root did not. Edrin's voice rang down through the open passages. Miraen Ash, submit. I will preserve your life as a contained witness. Caelric's head snapped up. No. Edrin ignored him. A palace needs memory, girl. It does not need disobedience. Miraen laughed once, broken and cold. You never wanted a palace that remembers, she said. You wanted one that obeys. The hatching basin warmed beneath her hands. Edrin's black map flickered. Miraen stepped into the center of the restored lines. I do not claim the crown. The red gold map shuddered. I do not claim the egg. The basin pulsed. I do not claim the king. Caelric closed his eyes as if the words hurt, and freed him at once. Miraen lifted her glowing wrist. I claim the path that was cut. The restored lines burst outward. Gold light raced through the hatching chamber, the hidden nursery, the erased children's rooms, the servant stairs, the abandoned cradles, the ash corridors, and every wall the official map had taught to lie. Edrin thrust both hands into his red gold route. I am the steadier path. Miraen's voice came through every open door. No, you are the closed one, the palace answered. Doors slammed open. Not 7. Dozens. 100 hidden seams broke through Cindervault Palace at once. Chambers of erased nurses, sealed witnesses, map-sick children, abandoned mothers, dragon keepers, and passage bearers opened into breath. Gold lines crossed the black hall, not to crown anyone, but to connect every room Edrin had removed from the world. His black map began to tear. No palace can survive every truth at once, Edrin shouted. Miraen stepped forward. Then it should stop surviving by choosing which truths to bury. The hollow beneath the basin opened. For one breath, she fell. Then something caught her. Not wings. A path. Gold light rose around her in the shape of a dragon made from corridors. It had no flesh, no crown mark, no master. It was not a beast to ride. It was every denied route, remembering how to become one body. The corridor dragon passed through Caelric's shadow. Stone shattered from the dragon shadow's throat, wing, and tail. Caelric cried out, but this time the pain did not bury him. It emptied what had never belonged inside him. Gold fire poured free, and his dragon shadow unfolded behind him, wounded but alive. Edrin screamed. His own black map wrapped around his wrists. Every closed room he had called mercy became a line binding him. Every child's name he had dissolved returned as a door he could not close. He fell to his knees. I preserved the palace. Caelric rose slowly. You preserved your control over it? The court looked to the king, then to Miraen. She stood in the hatching chamber with the corridor dragon around her, and a thin golden path glowing across her wrist where the correction seal had been. Caelric climbed from beneath the throne and stopped before the open nursery doorway. This time, the floor did not darken beneath him, but he did not enter. May I? He asked. The question reached deeper than command ever had. Miraen looked at him. She saw the king who had said proceed. She saw the man whose dragon had been dying inside a stolen route. She saw the ruler who had broken the pillars beneath his own throne rather than keep children holding it up. Yes, she said. But not as owner. Caelric entered the nursery and placed his crown on the floor before the cut route. If I rule, he said, I answer to every room that stands. The burned image of the woman shielding the egg softened in the wall. The egg did not hatch. It did not choose Miraen. It did not crown anyone, but the route around it finally closed into a circle. Miraen stepped into the black hall. No noble knelt. Good. Kneeling was easy. Making room was harder. The palace walls shifted behind her, opening door after door where the official map had always shown stone. Cindervault Palace did not crown Miraen Ash. It made space for her. She had not been born outside the palace. The palace had been redrawn to place her outside it. Now the walls were drawing her back.